you bless them and protect them and guide them. And we ask, Yahweh, that the Holy Spirit be pushed tonight across this country and into the ears and the eyes of your heritage people Israel, the true Hebrews of old, the Anglo-Saxon Caucasians, the true descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We ask that you be with those who are today, who have stood and are running and hiding, who have fought against the system. We ask that you protect them mentally, physically, and spiritually. We ask that you be with the hundreds of thousands of political prisoners who are in prisons and jails for their failure to pay the communist income tax, which has been imposed on us since the 1930s. And Yahweh, we ask that you be with the children, those who call upon your name and love you, that you allow them to grow up as calves of the stall to inherit this great kingdom in New Jerusalem, America. And bless their parents that they may guide them. And we ask that the parents remember that if they spare the rod, they shall spoil their children, and that the twig will grow as the branch. So be with us and guide us, and we thank you for your presence when you said, 2 or more gather and speak my name, there I am amongst them. So be with us and guide us, and give us the holy strength and power, and give us the divine protection to continue in thy word, and to teach the truth to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And we ask for a great awakening in the land, for the valley of dry bones to awaken with the Holy Spirit of truth, and that we shall reclaim this Christian republic and bring back heraldry, dignity, honesty, and truth among thy people who shall obey you, and you shall be our king, and we shall be thy people. We ask this in the name of Yahweh, who is Yahshua, being Jesus the Messiah. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our study tonight is entitled, Communism is Jewish. And it is a topic that has been discussed for many decades throughout the United States of America. The word communism has been spoken in most households throughout the world and through every nation in the world. And of course in the United States, people have always been told by the control news media that what has taken place is that no one can really understand or define the word communism. Now, this is not true. This is absolutely a fallacy. The reason they tell you that is because of behavior modification techniques, because they want you to forget the word communist. And they want you to forget that when you were young and when you went to school, you were taught that the communists were your enemies, of whom you today give your technology of advanced computer systems, ball-bearing machines to use in guidance systems to the Soviet missiles, that you feed the communist countries to make sure that their people do not revolt against their leaders to bring back righteousness in that nation. And for the Pope, who recently stated that communism and Christianity can live together, and made a tri-pole in Poland to represent the freedom fighters, the Catholic Church, and the Communist Party. Now that's quite a three hanging together, isn't it? The freedom fighters who fought the communists, the Catholic Church, and the communists all eating off the same plate. But what we have here is a problem. We have a lack of communications. And Hosea stated that my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge, that there is no truth in the land. And because of misinterpretations and understanding of communism, we have been led astray to where the word now is totally taken out of the press and off television, out of the schools, because you see, if you don't talk about communism, it means that it's no longer there. It's like the local drug problem on the playground. If the principal of the school and superintendent of the school and teachers don't admit it's there, it's not there, and their job isn't in jeopardy, is it? But you see, there's a bigger wolf at the door at this time, And we're going to talk about this Jewish communism because I'm going to prove to you tonight, and as we talk on this tape, and this tape will get all over the world, and it'll be talked about and people will listen to it, that communism is Jewish, right from its origin. And you know, I can remember going to school, and they continually told us that we had to fight the communists. Korea broke out. We had to fight the communists. But we weren't told that the MiG fighters that were used against our troops in Korea were Rolls-Royce jet engines delivered from England. We weren't told about the bombs dropped upon our troops in North Korea were the same bombs that were made by the Rockefeller bomb ordnance companies in America, dropped from B-24 bombers, which was sold to Red China and North Korea after World War II. We weren't told about betrayal either, were we? But tonight we're going to cover a vast amount of knowledge pertaining to Jewish communism, because there is no other type of communism other than Jewish communism. And before we can really understand what has happened in America and what they have done, we must go back and again think about when we were young and what people said before. Everyone talked about communism, but did you notice when you went to school or when you read the newspapers, nobody ever told you what the 10 planks of the Communist Manifesto were? Now, if you don't know what the policy or the guidelines of communism is, you will never recognize it sneaking up and capturing you without even knowing it. And this is the problem that we had, because our press is also controlled by the Jews. And as we get into the topic of communism tonight, I would like to touch on the press in this segment to relate to the people as to what the problem is and how it originated and how it started to so-called propagandize itself into our lives and to destroy our country. Now, as you know, the most modern effect of brainwashing in the United States does not just come from the newspapers today or the radios as it did back in the 40s and 50s and in the 30s. It comes from the electric toilet called television. And it comes from 3 major news sources: ABC, CBS, and NBC. Now, the 3 individuals that control the behavior modification techniques of brainwashing through television is Boss Goldenson of ABC, CBS boss Polly, and NBC boss Silverman. All Jews who control all the news of what is taking place against us on the boob tube. Now, I see Pally in the paper this last week. He resigned from CBS and said he was going to a different news network, that they couldn't get along. Well, it's from one Jew network to another, so I don't know who he thinks he's really fooling, other than the Shebez Goy, the Christians who they consider cattle and call cattle in the Babylonian Talmud. But we do have a problem with our news, and we do have a problem with what is being told to the American people. I am bringing these names up and these stations because they are responsible for their substations and also the little stations in different parts of the state. We're going to cover a lot of ground here tonight, and I have a lot of material substance that I am going to go into, so please bear with me as I get into this topic, Jewish communism. Now, in order to try and understand what really happened to America and what took place, we must go back into the mid-1800s or late 1800s, 1870, 1850 therein. And there were 2 individuals by the name of Adam Weishaupt, who was a Jew, and another individual which his name was Moses Mordecai Levy, who was the grandson of a Jewish rabbi who later became known in the history books as Karl Marx. These were Jews, and these were the 2 individuals that were responsible for writing what was known as called the Communist Manifesto, to be incorporated against an unsuspected world unleashed by the control news media of the world and financed by the international Jewish central bankers of the world to destroy free nations, monarchies, and every other type of government in the world at that time. And of course, they were very sneaky and very subtle, just like their old man Lucifer. He was more subtle than anybody or anything, wasn't he? So let's look now at what the 10 planks of the Communist Manifesto were. And what we're going to do then is that we're going to follow a guideline here, and we're going to talk a lot about this so-called Jewish communism. And then you're going to understand and realize what you are living in and what must be done at this time to destroy this yoke upon our neck and upon the backs of not only our people in America, but throughout the world. There are 10 planks to the Communist Manifesto, just as there are in 180-degree direction the 10 Bill of Rights to a Christian republic. Just like there are the 10 Commandments, which are the death penalties in the Holy Bible. But as we take a look at the Communist Manifesto and the 10 planks of the Communist Manifesto, I want to go to study these 10 planks so you understand them, so you will be able to converse with other people, possibly allow them to listen to this tape with you, and to show them how they have been betrayed by a traitorous Congress, by local officials on every aspect of government. Today, if you do not pay your tax, you are called un-American, aren't you? Today, if you cry out against the school system and what they're teaching to our children, you are called a communist or un-American. If you cry out at the so-called banking institutions in the United States, you are called a kook or a troublemaker or a neo-Nazi or a communist. They don't realize they fought against each other. And many other names that they'll come out and slander you with. Now, I'm not just talking about the control news media and politicians on every level of government. I am talking about the average American who walks the streets and the roads and plows their fields in America today. And by the time we're done tonight, you are going to see the propaganda job that has been done on your family, on your friends, and on your neighbors and everybody else who resides in this country, including the President of the United States of America. Plank number 1 of the Communist Manifesto. Abolition of private property. Abolition of property and land and application of all rents of land to public purposes. Now you say, well, how did this ever get against us, or what does it mean? Well, number 1, the property tax on private homes violates the United States Constitution. It came into being with what was called the Land Use Bill, or Senate Bill 268, passed by the United States Senate in May 21, 1973, to entirely lock the first plank of the Communist Manifesto against the American people. Prior to that, there were also land taxes. Your land is yours. It should be protected by allodial, meaning no state or federal interference against your land. And what they did is they told the American people if they didn't pay taxes on their land, they wouldn't be able to finance their learning institutions, didn't they? But everyone forgot to look back and see how we financed our schools prior to land tax. And it was called a poll charge on the township levels, where the people were given a poll charge on the township levels to pay the teacher they hired to teach from the books the parents wanted taught from, and at the school at the local township. So with this action of the first plank of the Communist Manifesto, which came about and really dug its heels in with the New Deal of Franklin Delano Roosevelt with his wonderful communist wife Eleanor, and her Soviet Moscow associates, such as the Ware cell, who was the first spy cell in the U.S. State Department, Ware, from the Soviet Union, who was a Jew, we start to see a trend of some things that are taking place here. Now, if you tell people that you refuse and you don't want to pay your property tax, what do they say to you? They call you un-American. They tell you that it's not right because they pay the tax, you should pay the tax. What they're actually doing is telling you they're more stupid than you are. But they just have a different way of telling you or realizing it. Now, plank number 2 of the Communist Manifesto is to impose a heavy progressive income tax against the people of the country. Now, I don't have to tell you how heavy the progressive income tax is in the United States, because in history past, any nation that ever exceeded 35% went into total revolution. I believe we're up around 60% in total progressive taxes at this time, and I guess we're so fluorided up and boozed up and drugged up that people really don't understand what's happening. They always bitch when they look at their paycheck, but if you try and tell them what's happening to them, they'll turn on you and rend you because they do not want to face the personal responsibility of having to stand and admit that you're right and that they, most of all they, just may have to do something about their problem. Oh, they'll back you up way back. Way back. And then if something comes up where you're identified as possibly one of those kooks who tell people that a progressive income tax is a communist plank, then they're gone. Reminds me, in a way, somehow of the Birch Society. They'll speak up until the heat's on, and then they jump out of the fire. Now, a heavy progressive or graduated income tax was brought about and against the American people by the 16th Amendment to the Constitution of the United States in 1913, entitled Income Tax. Now, this tax originally and is to be a corporative tax and is unlawful to apply it to individuals or citizens of the United States of America. It was a corporative tax, had nothing to do with the personal people or the citizens of this land. We the people were never ever to be taxed in this country. Never ever to be taxed to pay for the 6,000 abortions a day of our children, to give foreign aid to Jews, communist Jews in Israel and in the Soviet Union, Czechoslovakia, Poland, Romania, Latvia, Hungary, and all other communist nations of the world, including India, by the way, who's sleeping in bed with Moscow and has been for many years, and the other nations of the world in Africa. It has never, ever been intended by law to be a personal income tax, but a corporative tax against corporations as a privilege of being in business in the United States. And secondly, the 16th Amendment to the Constitution is illegal pursuant to common law as to where the corporations also must be taxed. People say, well, how are we going to pay the bills? We need a military to protect ourselves from the communists. I say, well, if that's the case, quit financing the communists and you won't need such a big military. Are we so stupid as to finance and arm our enemy with better technical weapons and advanced technology of warfare than we ourselves have, especially when it's drawn on the blackboards and on the drafting boards of the institutions and the industrial military complex of America, to be given by the patent offices controlled by the Rockefellers to Moscow through their main courier, Arm & Hammer, another Jew. But you see, this is very heavy, because everything I'm going to talk about here, the average American thinks it's right. And the average American who says he goes to church every Sunday and hates communists doesn't even know that he is a communist. and supports the communist sociology and ideology system that is perpetrated against America. Now you see why the Pope made the stands that Christianity and communism and freedom fighters can get together, because, see, then no one has to face their personal responsibility, do they? A progressive, graduated income tax against the citizens of the United States. Secondly, it also means that the state shall regain power and rights to take the wealth from the so-called free enterprise system and individuals and incorporate it against them with different rules and statute as to where you have no money in due time to hire any counsel whatsoever, or to have any money to, shall say, protect yourself in their tribunal courts, where there is nothing left in society but to make sure you have enough to pay your light bill, to have some of their garbage, chemically induced foods on the market, to buy some of their Rockefeller crude oil called gasoline in your Jew-owned automobile, and to keep you with just enough money in your pocket to buy yourself a 12-pack of Miller Lowlife. In Russia or the Soviet Union, it's just enough to have your daily bottle of vodka, made from grain given to them by the United States to keep the people drunk in the Soviet Union. Look at your price structures. Go to your automobiles and go to your homes. Go to other forms of commodities of which you buy, and go back 20 years ago and you price booze, and you price homes, and you price cars, and then I want you to go price the booze today, and you're going to find out that booze hasn't gone up all that much. They want to make sure that the booze is good and cheap, so everybody can continue to drown their sorrows. Keep you drugged, you know. That's all booze is a drug. Full of sugar, full of alcohol. Beer has now formaldehyde in it to burn out your liver and kidneys. Got to get you in the hospital. Got to put you under the surgeon's knife. Got to raise our interest rates and our policy rates at the insurance companies. You know who own them? The Jews. We got to get these goy on the table, cut them up, get these cattle moving. What's that old song that head them out? Who sang that back in the 1950s there? There's an old country western dude. That'll come to me sooner or later. Round them up, get them up, cowboy, rawhide. Round them up, get up the Shabez goy. Get them in the factories. I get them farmers going. You cattle, take care of your cattle. That's what it's all about, isn't it? Cattle. That's what the Jews call you, Shabez Goyim. Cattle. So that's the situation that happened on the heavy, progressive, and graduated income tax. And of course, you know, back in those days, before that income tax came in, of course, corporations did pay some taxes. Of course, we never had foreign aid back there. And you must figure and realize, before 1913, how did America ever grow to be the mighty country it was if there was no income tax? There was prosperity, there was health, the farmers owned their land, they came as immigrants from the old country, they owned their land within 6 to 10 to 12 to whatever years it took, because the usury system wasn't embedded against them. We had gold and silver coin. And then all of a sudden, since 1913, America as the great nation started to be destroyed meticulously and very carefully and slowly, right before the eyes of its own people, and they never recognized their own destruction. But no one ever stopped to think. And when I appeared before the Wisconsin News Convention last Saturday, I asked them the question, if income tax is so important to pay the bills, how were the bills paid before 1913? When America was far stronger materially morally, financially, than at any time in the history of the land. They couldn't answer the question. And the reason they couldn't answer it, because they couldn't think back to 1912. No one can think back because no one understands history. They have not done their job. They have not done their homework because they are byproducts of an indoctrinational system called the federal public school systems. And this is the key. The only thing they're taught at school is a better and a new world order. They don't want to talk about what happened back here to interpose as to why maybe this new world order would come about. We can't talk about that. We can't talk to the kids that prior to 1913, I'm beating it into your head, there were no income taxes. Because then someone might have to get up and explain why there were no income taxes. Why Grandma and Grandpa never paid an income tax. And why their father never paid an income tax and didn't have foreign aid. We mustn't have that in school. And we'll make these cattle barns called old age homes, and we'll put the cattle in there after we're done with them to make sure we put them out of the sight of their grandchildren, so they never have an opportunity to tell their grandchildren they never paid taxes prior to 1913. The cattle barns, the old age homes. Financed by who? The federal government. Financed by the American people. Criminally. Well, what's the third plank of the Communist Manifesto? Abolition of all rights of inheritance. Franklin Delano Roosevelt's administration passed what was known as the inheritance tax in 1934 as part of the New Deal. Also, metro-regional amortization of private property. Prior to 1934, when the inheritance tax was passed, a man who worked all his life on his farm or in his business or on his ranch or whatever type of business he had, whether it was a plumbing business, a grocery store, whatever it was, could pass that business on to his heir or on to his family, to his children, with no federal inheritance tax connected to it. Because this man worked all his life to mold an asset and to carve a living in this country to make life a little bit better for him and his family. And it was his right of the Constitution of the United States and the Bill of Rights to pass those assets and financial assets on to his heirs so they could continue to build and have what you know as a free enterprise system. But in 1934, right in the middle of the Great Planned Depression, when money was very short and no one had any money, along comes Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the red communist that he was. And they passed what was known as the inheritance tax. And as the banks were foreclosing and farmers didn't have much money and people were dying all over the place and everything else, then they stated what? You must pay an inheritance tax if you want to retain the property, and you must pay it to the federal government. This in turn forced the farmers who may have had a net value at that time of a farm, let's say it was maybe valued at $30,000, if it was a nice farm, a lot of land, cattle. Let's say that the inheritance tax was 5%, they had to come up with what? $1,500 cash. The banks were closed down. The banks had no money. And Franklin Delano Roosevelt and his little Jew advisor says, don't worry, PCA and FHA got money. Go take your land and put it up as an asset. And we'll borrow you the money to pay your criminal communist income tax to retain your property. Now understand, ladies and gentlemen, that there is no such thing as free property or liberty or a free enterprise system as long as any usury or any loan is connected to a business or to an estate or to a person. You are never a free person if you are in usury or you own a land that is connected to usury, there will never be freedom, and there will never be a free enterprise system as long as that business is engulfed in a usury system of interest. This is one of the biggest lies taught today to the American people. So all these people who had farms and businesses in order to get and retain their property, because if they didn't pay the inheritance tax, what happened to their property? It was confiscated by who? By the communists who worked in the U.S. government. And it was sold. It was sold. But they had a note, didn't they? Remember, they always cause the problem, and then they give you a solution. FHMA, PCA, and all those other little social programs that they threw against the American people. And the American people say, oh, wow, am I glad I could go there and get the money. I would have lost my business. I would have lost my land. They didn't pick up their guns and go to Washington and shoot him like they should have. Clean the house. Because you see, in the 1930s, communism and the communist theology and understanding hadn't even seeped down into the county levels, really. It was still in its minute form in Washington, starting to work very slowly on the state legislative bodies. But the people were pacified by their preachers. Oh, don't worry about it, things will get better. We'll vote for someone else next time, it'll get better. Have we ever heard that one? Oh, the Republicans, look what they did to us, we'll vote for the Democrats. Oh my God, look what the Democrats did to us in the last 4 years. We better get a Republican in. Oh yeah, I know they're both crooked. How many times you hear this? But at least this one's the lesser of two evils. Well, why have any evil at all? And this is what happened when they brought in the abolition of all rights of inheritance, the third plank of the Communist Manifesto. Now, I've got to ask you, whether you're listening to this tape or whoever you are, wherever you are, including you people here tonight, does the inheritance tax still exist in the United States of America? Yes, it does. If the inheritance tax is in the United States of America, and now it's also into the state inheritance taxes, they passed her right down. Do you see how it works? Let me ask you, do you live under communism? Yes, you do. The same thing is for the heavy progressive income tax. Do you still have it in America? Yes, you do, on the federal and state level. Some of you even have city taxes, a progressive tax. You live under total communist doctrine. And also the abolition of property and property taxes, application of all rents and land to public purposes. Do you have that yet in America? You live under the Communist Manifesto. So far, under the three planks. Well, maybe they've only got 3 of them enforced. Maybe we should stop and say, well, let's not read the rest, because maybe we're not under them and we can pretend we're not, you see. That way we can play ostrich and stick our head in the sand and let you know what's sticking in the air. And we'll give the Jew a big fly swatter to hit us there again, right? Well, let's continue here. And let's go to what is known as the 4th plank of the Communist Manifesto, of which we were never taught about. Confiscation of the property of all immigrants and rebels. Rebels. So in other words, to be a rebel, according to the 4th plank of the Communist Manifesto, you have to be against communism. Regional government. This is regional government. And as to when the United States was divided into 10 Soviet regions on 3/27/69, the statement by the President on restructuring of government service systems by Richard Nixon, Executive Order 11647, established a commissar control staff for each region in the United States of America. Does anybody know how many regions there are? 10 regions in the United States. How many regions in the Soviet Union? 10 regions in the Soviet Union. And then, of course, that region was cut up as a pie, and that little piece of the pie was cut up as a pie, and they kept bringing what was known then as years to come the zoning administrators in. So you could buy a permit to get a right to build a house, or having to have a permit to do anything on your land that you pay for, pay taxes on. Is that correct? But if you don't pay inheritance tax, even though you pay the taxes and pay for the land, who's going to own the land? The state, the federal government. Who really owns the land anyway? The federal government and the state. You're just serfs, paying them unconstitutionally to live on their land. Because there is no more free land in America. Well, you see those rebels now, who those rebels are? Those are those kooks, you know, who stand up and say, hey, wait a minute, we have a problem here. We're not supposed to do these things. Our forefathers never did them. The Constitution and the Bill of Rights prohibits these things from happening. And all of a sudden, your neighbor starts standing up and voicing his opinion out against you, not even realizing that he's been totally psychologically brainwashed into following the total Soviet communist theology in this land. The fifth plank of the Communist Manifesto. And as we get into the Communist Manifesto fifth plank, I would like for your information to know that Moses Mordecai Levy, who was part of the author of the Karl Marx Manifesto, the Communist Manifesto, who was the son of a Jewish lawyer and a grandson of a Jewish rabbi, this information is found in the 1911 Encyclopedia Britannica. And don't read those old books now. Read the new United Nations, the United Nations books. They'll tell you the truth. Trust us. We won't lie to you. Well, let's continue here. Fifth plank of the Communist Manifesto. Let's see if we have a problem here. Oh, by the way, do we have regional government in America? Can there and is there confiscation of the property of all immigrants and rebels in this land if you fail to pay your taxes or pay the FMHA or pay the Jew-owned PCA? By the way, is the FMHA and the PCA part of the federal instrumentality of this country? No, they're not. They are Jew-owned private banks and loaning institutions. Well, very interesting. Going to the fifth plank of the Communist Manifesto, it's very simple. It's called centralization of credit in the hands of the state by means of a national bank with state capital and an exclusive monopoly on banking. Does the United States of America have a central bank? A private bank which is not part of the federal treasury or of the government structure. And what is the name of that central bank in the United States? The Federal Reserve Corporation. Now, in the case Lewis versus the United States, the Ninth Circuit Court of California in January of 1983 stated that the Federal Reserve Corporation is a private central bank in the United States, and it is not any instrumentality of the federal government whatsoever. So I ask you, do we have a central bank in America who controls their money after stealing our gold and silver and utilizing interest rates to enslave the American people into serfdom? Is that correct? So, we find now that we have fulfilled half of the communist plank of the Communist Manifesto, and that at this time we start to see a picture that has been drawn very meticulously and artfully by the most subtle, cagey, dangerous, deadly, venomous people who have ever walked this earth, and you can't really call them people, called Jews, the seed of Lucifer, who are hell-bent, through their satanic drive to destroy through ritual murder anything that is good, to destroy anything that is good. They are also, of course, in control of what is known as planned obsolescence. Planned obsolescence is when the quality leaves and the quantity comes on. Instead of machine parts, we'll have stamp parts. Imitation plastic to look like wood. Instead of oak to build your house, we'll give you compressed sawdust. Instead of having rugs, which are true rugs, real rugs of cloth, we'll give you oil rugs and carpets from our oil refineries. Nothing of quality are we going to allow you to have, just quantity, so we can continue to cut the price and make a buck from you Christian cattle. Just like your shoes that you're wearing with the plastic soles and the artificials on your feet, made by the Jew companies of Italy, South Korea, Taiwan, Japan, Mexico, after they destroyed our leather-making, producing shoes and boot companies in America. No problem whatsoever. Now, the centralization of banking came about on December 23rd, 1913. Now, isn't that interesting here? 1913 is starting to ring a big bell. Do you notice the progressive income tax came? Thank you. In 1913. Now we find out that the Federal Reserve Act of December 23rd, 1913, Congress violated its own oath by unlawfully giving the privately owned Federal Reserve Corporation sole control of the issue of money and credit in the United States, along with the Antichrist usury or interest, in violation of the U.S. Constitution, Article 1, Section 10, Clause 1 and 3, and Article 1, Section 8, Clause 5, in the violation of their oath as congressmen of the United States of America, to impose upon us a central bank to take away the power of money of the people. And remember, it was Rothschild, owner and president of the central banks of the world, who said, "I care not who makes the nation's laws, but whoever controls the nation's money controls that nation." Who controls America today? Is it the President of the United States? No, it's not. Is it the Congress of the United States? No, it isn't. It is the Federal Reserve Corporation and all their Jew directors of their 12 district banks and the flagship of the Federal Reserve, the Chase Manhattan of the Rockefellers. Well, we finished 5, and now we're going into 6. The 6th plank of the Communist Manifesto. Now, I've never really gotten into this, and to some people who might be listening to this, they could say, well, you know, we know all about that. We understand that. What about your neighbor? What about the people who have never had an opportunity to hear this? You know, there's an old saying, Jesus said you must feed them milk before you feed them meat, or they're going to get indigestion and they're going to throw up. How many of you went out there, instead of feeding milk to the people, you ran out right away and said, "Oh, the Jews are to blame for everything"? And they looked at you and said, "You're nuts. You're a kook. You're crazy." You tried to feed them meat, didn't you? Because you found out, you got so excited, you found out what was going on. You didn't take the time to realize it took you time to put it together, and you go out and within a 10 to 15 minute period, you lay the heavy, hard stuff on them, you hit them with a broadside, and these people literally run away from you. Is that correct? How many people have had that happen to them here? Everyone should really raise their hand, shouldn't they? That's right. Well, the 6th plank of the Communist Manifesto. Centralization of the means of communications and transport into the hands of the state or the government. Executive Order 10995 provides for total government control of all communications in all forms. And Executive Order 10999 has taken over every form of transportation in the United States of America. You ever see these big rigs that roll up and down the highway, these 18-wheelers, these men trying to make a living? They've got all those funny little stickers all over the door and on the side of the cab and everything else. Who issues those funny little stickers with those numbers in that? ICC. Actually, that ICC should be spelled JEW. Telling whom can go where and why they can go and what they can haul and how much they got to pay to go across this part of the country to try and make a living. In actuality, who is controlling their very movement and their capability of making a living? The Jew communist government that controls the United States. And if you're not good, if you don't obey the rules, all those little stickers come off the sides of them rigs, and you're not allowed to stay in business, cattle. And though the cattle haul the cattle, that's what the Jews call you, you know, you're out of business. So you got to toe the line. Do we have a problem like that in America? I'd have to say that you will not speak unless you pay to speak. Goy. And I need not tell you that at the end of every telephone is a meter. And I don't need to tell you who owns the utility stock in this country. I got to figuring it out the other day, and I said to myself, boy, I'm fighting quite a war within myself right now. I get up to 1,000 telephone calls a week on my call-in service, which run an average of 3 minutes. That's 3,000 minutes. And most of them are long distance, which means it's about $2.50 a call. Times 1,000 means that I'm making those damn Jews about $2,500 a week off that call-in. That's $100,000 a year. But I think the information's worth it, or they wouldn't be calling in and recording that message and playing it at work in places, huh? It hurts me, but it's got to get out. And it is getting out. That's a bunch of money, isn't it? Well, when you stop and think of how much udka and brandy and beer and smokes and wine that the American people suck down every day, I think it's a drop in the bucket. In fact, I think those telephone answering services are one of the greatest tools we've got at our disposal at this time. Well, centralization of the means of communication. Now you start to see why there must be permits and licenses. And you notice even if you go out and buy your own telephone, what you've got to do with the telephone company, there's a little FCC or whatever it's called underneath the phone. You've got to tell the operator the number on it so you can plug it in to use it, don't you? Shouldn't be any of their business. You bought and paid for it. Bought and paid for it. But in order for you to use it, you better play by the rules. Play by the rules. Well, we've got 6 of these planks done. It looks like we've got a few problems in the United States. I wonder if they could have anything to do with the condition of the country. Well, remember what John D. Rockefeller said, the only way we can have prosperity in America is to destroy the free enterprise system. Has he done it? Yes, it's called what? International conglomerates. Monkey Ward, Penny's, Sears, and then you've got other ones like Fleece Farm, owned by the Jew, and many other great super-duper Kmart, Macy's, you name them, they're out there. But we've got to destroy that little family business. How many of you remember when you were real young, you used to have a corner grocery store that everyone used to shop at, huh? And everyone went to the corner grocery store and they got along and played with their kids and they paid their bills and they had a little line of credit here. The guy never paid interest. You never paid interest or anything. He let you run up 30, 40 bucks at times. Guys got paid every 2 weeks. They went and paid their grocery bill. There was no interest or usury on that. Whatever happened to them little corner grocery stores that were free enterprise? All of a sudden, the big supermarket zone. Red Owl. Red Owl. Right? And what's another one of those, Hoggly Wogglies. Piggly Wiggly, right? The Hoggly Wogglies. All owned by who? The Jew. And what was the main thing they said for putting them up? We're going to give you cheap price. Cheap. And no one said, oh, but wait a minute, you're going to destroy these little businesses over here, these little grassroots businesses that have been here for years, and we know who they are, and they're our neighbors. No, everyone did what? By that time, they were real what? Real Judaized, weren't they? And instead of quality and friendship and understanding of a free enterprise system and small business, they deserted those little corner grocery stores because what happened, the Jews that control the distribution of food raised the prices up to such a proportion that unless you bought so many cases and cases of product, you didn't get a discount. And you could no longer compete because at this time, in the 50s and the mid-50s and going into the 60s, the taxes were increasing and there was less money and less money, and you were looking for the best price you could get, and you went to the supermarket for the cheap products. People say, I remember. I remember. I remember too. I remember our corner grocer. I remember him real well. He was the captain of the fire department. Everyone liked him in town, but the problem is the Red Owl came in and drove him out of business, and he had to move out of town and open a business somewhere else, service station or something. No one could understand why he left. But no one did anything to protect the small business either. Well, seventh plank of the Communist Manifesto. The extension of factories and instruments of production owned by the state or government. The bringing into cultivation of wastelands. Oh, does that sound like something, the Wetlands Act that they're ramming down everyone's throat? And the improvement of the soil generally in accordance with a common plan. You know what the common plan is? What's mine is mine and what's yours is mine. That's the ideology of Judaism. What's mine is mine and what's yours is mine. You pay the taxes and we'll tell you what to do with it. And if you don't like it, we'll throw you and put you into a mental institution, or we'll degrade you in society so you'll lose all your friends and no one will listen to you anymore. Well, what happened there? Well, if you look back, you'll see that the seventh plank of the Communist Manifesto was instilled against the American people through what was known as the Model Cities Public Law 89-754 and the 701 Plan, which was the master plan for regional planning. Also Public Law 90-577, Executive Order 11490, which authorizes the Office of Emergency Planning to put all controls into effect in times of increased international tensions and economic and financial crises. The order directs the Postmaster General to operate a national registration of all persons and the Housing and Finance Authority to relocate communities. Which means, and you've all seen the map that I've had. Remember the big map I had which showed all those cities in the United States with no one living in Wyoming, northern Michigan, northern California, called the relocation area possibility? Did you see the latest one last year when they offered all those people in the Appalachia Valley or Ohio so much money to go to Texas to look for a job? And the federal government was going to pay so much of that? They give them like $127 a week to leave Ohio to go to Texas to find a job in the oil fields. Do you know what that was? The control of people. To control the population of the country, to move them anywhere they wanted, whenever they wanted to move them. They made citizens of America migrant workers. First, they destroy the economy through their usury in banks and communist laws in Ohio. Then they use the taxpayers' money that they used to do it with to ship them into another state to look allegedly for another job. Relocation, population relocation. Has that happened at all in America? What happened during the 29 Depression? Was there a populace relocation? California, here we come. Did you know people who were stopped on the highways or when they got to the California border, if they didn't have like $5 in their pocket, they weren't admitted into the state? California passed a law that anyone who came there without money couldn't even come in the state. But who cares? This was America. You know, the land of the free and the home of the brave. Restrictions, permits, license, do's and don'ts. Yahweh said we're to be a free people. We are to be able to dictate our own destiny. We the people, not the communists and the Jew communists and their proselyte communists of our own race that destroys us internally in this land. Abraham Lincoln said, if America is to be destroyed, it shall never be done from a power from without, but it shall be destroyed from within. And that's exactly where we're at today. We have been gutted out by the gleaners. They have picked us clean. They have picked us totally clean. And now at this time, they are deindustrializing America at such a rapid pace you cannot even understand. All of the good key jobs and factories are being dismantled and shipped to India, South Korea, Taiwan, and other places of the world, until the American people might wake up from drinking their damn beer and booze and slop and finally realize that there is absolutely nothing here. And prophecy has been fulfilled. We are already at that limit right now. And they continue to bring in aliens. Well, if they're moving all of our industrial complexes to other countries, why don't they move the aliens over there to work on them, huh? Well, those aliens have a bigger job to do, don't they? It's called destroy the white Anglo-Saxon Caucasians as part of an invasionary army by the Jew bankers. The 8th plank of the Communist Manifesto. Equal liability of all to labor. Establishment of industrial armies, especially for agriculture. Under Executive Order 11,000 provides mandate for mobilization of civilians into government work brigades under government supervision. A national police force subsequent to Executive Orders 11,647 under the Federal Emergency Management Agency. Back in the 1930s, they called it simply CCC. After they destroyed the free enterprise system with the planned depression, they brought forth their human work brigades under the supervision of the communist socialists who controlled the United States. Oh, everyone was happy. They had a roof over their head. They got to eat 2 meals a day. They worked in the woods for nothing, not even knowing that they had totally been Sovietized by that time, because they had never ever been given the opportunity to know what communism was, to recognize it. If they tell you that we have a measles problem in the United States, they tell you the symptoms to look for, don't they? Little red marks, a fever, contagious. You look for something, right? They've never told you what the 10 planks of the Communist Manifesto was, because it's so simple. If you were ever told them, you would know what was done to your country. If you have an outbreak of rats in your country, and we've got them called Jews, just like any other country, they're just on two legs. In fact, they're deadlier than the rats that run the sewers of the city. They tell you what the rat was, and that's what I'm doing tonight. Jewish communism. And look at the money you're paying in taxes to Israel, that Jewish state, that communist state. By the way, do communists have communes? You've been told that in school, I know you have. What is the anglicized word of commune? What do they call it? What do the Jews call it? A kibbutz. A kibbutz is a commune. Who has kibbutzes? Jews. Who was Karl Marx? Moses Mordecai Levy. Jew. Communist whose laws are the Babylonian Talmud in total defiance to Almighty God. You think we'll ever get this one on TV? How do you think we'll get equal opportunity and equal time? Let's take a look at the 9th plank of the Communist Manifesto. The 9th plank of the Communist Manifesto is the combination of agriculture with manufacturing industries. Gradual abolition or destruction of the distinction between town and county government by a more equal distribution of the population over the countryside. This is called urban renewal. Population control via Executive Order 11490 and 1100. It is also involved in what's known as metro regional planning programs in accordance with restructuring government service systems under Executive Order 11647 and equal rights. Equal rights. How come the government, if you remember back in the 60s, remember when the government put a freeze on rent? You could only charge so much rent, you couldn't charge any more rent. You remember the rent controls? Price controls, do you remember these? Why did they do that? They did it because if you don't have any more money coming in, with prices and costs of a rental complex continuing to go up, what eventually happens to the rental institution? It collapses, it gets run down, it gets ragged, and when it gets ragged and run down, the cost of renting it goes down, and guess who moves in? But that's part of the system. If you go along with the system, you get to rent to the blacks. And if you think it was run down before, baby, give them about 2 months. It'll look like it got hit with an internal tornado. But we's all equal. Just ask the Jews. That's why they send their kids to private schools, and they send us to school with the blacks and the yellows and the polka dots. And all the confused faces, right? We're all equal, though. It's just some of us are a little more equal than others. Paragraph 10. I'm going to go back into 9 for a second. Combination of agriculture and manufacturing industries. Who's lending a lot of the money now to companies in America? Federal grants. Who's loaning a lot of money into the agriculture aspect today in America? Federal Land Bank. Taking over the freedom of private farming. Controls, license, permits again. Do you know I had a person tell me the other day that he knows of a farmer that is so in debt that he has to get permission from the banker to even get a haircut to spend the money. That is how in debt he is. Take a look at these farmers who go to these auctions. Before they go to the auctions, who do they have to call to see if they've got any line of credit to buy anything and how much they can spend? PCA, FMHA, the local usurer, the branch of the International Jew Communist Central Bank of the United States. But they can't see it, can they? Because you see, now that the old folks are put into the cattle barns called what? Old age homes? No one's talking anymore because the families have been utterly destroyed with this Soviet communist system. And since no one talks anymore, the children will never know. Yet the Bible states that Yeshua commanded that the grandmothers and grandfathers are to teach the children. Why are the grandmas and the grandpas to teach the children? Because they've been around, they've been burnt in life, they know the do's and the don'ts. Because they can tell those children, hey, wait a minute. Don't you do that. Here's why you don't do that. Oh, we can't have that. Grandma and Grandpa better go to the cattle barn. We can't have grandmas and grandpas running around in the society because these kids might ask too many questions. You know, up in Tigerton, they're really on me now at that school. I got students taking the Spotlight, the Posse Report, and every other piece of paper we can get in that high school. They're pulling their hair out. The teachers are being asked questions they can't answer, and they're telling the students to shut up. And that's like what? Forbidden fruit. And they want answers. And they're not satisfied with the answers they're getting. And don't think these young kids are as stupid as they look. They're asking questions and they know there's a problem. Go ahead and get into these colleges, into the lounges, and lay some paper out for them to read. It's forbidden fruit. They'll take it to the printer and run off 1,000 copies before you know it. Give them an opportunity. Hell, they don't want to go to another Vietnam War. You think they don't think about marriage and having children when they see their family hasn't got anything as they are now? What do you think lies in store for them? What do you think is in their mind? Give them a break. Get them some literature to read, something to listen to. Get it to them. Now is the time to penetrate into these institutions of learning with our literature and with our tapes and demand appearances. Get in there and speak to them. And if they want a posse man to get in, tell them you'll go in and talk and bring the Karl Marx Manifesto and bring the Constitution of the United States and say, let's read them and see which one we live under. Then you know why we're here. Pass it out. This card that I got here is probably one of the most dangerous cards you could ever give to anybody. See that little business size card? On one side it's got the Communist Manifesto in the 10 points. And it has a question, which plan is being followed? The Communist Manifesto with the 10 points, and on the other side it's got which plan is being followed? The Bill of Rights. Now, isn't that interesting? And it doesn't take you long to read one side and read the other side and say to yourself, self, we have a problem. Got to get it printed up with just a little more goodies on it. A little insignia. No, a 5-pointed star. Where it says distributed by posse, by law, posse comitatus. And probably on the side where it has the Communist Manifesto, we'll put a 6-pointed star with a hammer and sickle in there, huh? How would you like that? Would you like to hand them out? How many would like to hand these little cards out? Hell, we should be able to get them printed for next to nothing, right, John? What a barn burner. Everywhere you go, you leave them. I was saying to myself, let's get that airplane up with about 50,000 of them on a Sunday night and let them go. But we'd have to get a permit to use airspace. Yeah, we got to have a few telephone numbers on it. It's got to be worked on. And you people listening to this tape, if you want some, you go right ahead and write into me, and we'll make sure you get them. And send a contribution for them, because nothing's free, not even your freedom. All right? But we'll supply them. How many people want 1,000 in here? Oh, my. How many want 500? Oh, boy, no one wants 500? Everybody wants 1,000? We'll get to a printer and we'll see what a bulk printout will be. Give me a week on this baby. And then we'll start putting them out, and I think people are going to like it. What's that old saying? Try it, you'll like it. And, you know, it doesn't take much to read it. Well, yeah, you have one side red and one black, huh? One side blue and one black, or one red. I don't know. We'll do her. And get out there by that high school. Pass them out to those kids. Well, I'm going to get off the subject here now. I don't want to get too far off. You know how it goes. I'm going to stay in line here. Well, we know how here that equal liability of all to labor. By the way, who has a better chance of getting a job in America today? The black or the Anglo-Saxon? The black does. Any minority, is that correct? All right. Now, that's right, the Anglo-Saxons are the minority. Let's ask this question. Who stands a better question? Watch out. Who stands a better chance of getting a job in America today? The Anglo-Saxon, the American-born black, the American-born Indian, the American-born Chinaman, or the alien? The alien does. Is that correct? Now, I got a question for you. What's 500 Jews at the bottom of the sea? Just the beginning. Did you like that one? That's the only one. That's the only one you get tonight. That's worth only one. Now they're going to call me a racist. The only truth they know. I'm proud to be what I am, a Christian Anglo-Saxon. Well, let's go here by the 10th plank of the Communist Manifesto. 10th plank of the Communist Manifesto, and see if you can recognize it. Free education for all children in public schools. Abolition of children's factory labor in its present form, combination of education with industrial production. The outcome was a confiscatory tax on private homes to finance free education and support socialistic Jew communism education by the National Education Association and state associations. Apprenticeship education was confined primarily to the association with the Jew-owned, controlled, and created unions in the United States of America and throughout the world. Abel, Meany, Fitzsimmons, all Jews. The original AFL, created by Samuel Gompers. The first 3 editions of its paper was written in Yiddish. Jews. And this is why the little union guy never understands why the little guy never really gets a big job in the office. It's always a relative or an acquaintance. Well, you see, the Shini, they must control the money. Up on the East Coast about 4 years ago, the Jews took all the money in the truckers' pension fund, loaned it to the Jews in Israel, $50 million at 5% interest payable in 25 years. The union fund and the pension fund went broke. No one could understand it. How long, America? How long before you fully understand the international Jewish communism that has been brought against the United States? Totally embedded completely by 1937 to 38 in this country, with the New Deal of Franklin Delano Roosevelt and his communist wife Eleanor. It is time to wake up and realize that every one of these 10 planks of the Communist Manifesto are now incorporated, and that the American people are living under total communism. And because they do not understand, and because they have never ever been told what the 10 planks of the Communist Manifesto are, they cannot, for some reason, put the pieces together. Women's suffrage started in New York. The Bible states that it's ungodly for the women to partake in the church business. That doesn't mean the Catholic Church or the Lutheran Church. It means the political structure of a nation, a Christian nation. It was verboten and forbidden for the women to vote in the United States until the Suffrage Act that was brought on by the Jews and pushed by the Jewish-controlled and financed unions of the United States, by enough Congress and senators to finally instilling into the minds of the American people that a man and woman were equal. That is not true in the eyes of Yahweh God. And now, we have Bill H.R. 1, ERA, a bill to reform the rights of women. Now this bill, H.R. 1, which is, I'm going to talk about for a moment, was recently Congressman Tip O'Neill, my favorite lush in Washington, reintroduced legislation. You know, I'll tell you, if Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer ever gets out of his job, Tippy Baby will really take her over. Reintroduced legislation to try to gain passage of an Equal Rights Amendment. This bill, of course, is called H.R. 1 and already has 221 co-sponsors in the House of Representatives. This is the very same amendment concerned Americans fought and defeated last year's. But the liberals, the communist liberals and pro-feminist groups will not let the issue die. Totally supported and financed by Jews, such as Bella Abzug, that ugly Jewess who would stop a freight train at high speed. And it states, and if they be able to get 2/3 majority vote from both the Senate and the House of Representatives, the Equal Rights Amendment will pass. And efforts must be made now if this bill is to be stopped in the Senate before it gains any more sponsors and momentum. And we must now voice out our indignation and put it on the line with these politicians and these bureaucrats, because this will be the end result. It will require women to register for the draft and be placed in combat positions alongside men. It will give the federal government, not the states, control over marriage, property rights, divorce, alimony, child custody, abortion, and inheritance laws. It will result in legalized homosexual marriages and permit married homosexual couples to adopt children. It will make current rape, prostitution, and other seduction laws unenforceable. It will invalidate state laws requiring a man to support his wife and family. It will require sex-integrated school athletic programs, including showers, of course, and football and wrestling. And it will deny tax-exempt status to churches, seminaries. I don't want to say synagogues because they don't belong here anyway. If they refuse to sexually integrate facilities and ordain women as priests and ministers. Everything ungodly. And yet it has 221 co-sponsors. It's nothing but an aftermath of conglomeration of the Communist Manifesto to destroy and corrupt the minds of the people and of the children. Taking a look at some of the great quotes by some of the top rabbis and Jews in a history throughout America, Rabbi Abram Feinberg of Canada, the top rabbi, stated, quote, "Only when we no longer raise our eyebrows at the sight of a Negro holding hands with a white girl will the West have begun to tear the racial poison from its vitals. The laws should encourage, not forbid, the intermingling of bloods." He also stated that religious leaders must exercise all their influence to stop mixed marriages between Jews and non-Jews. And Rabbi Pesach Z. Levovitz, president of the Rabbinic Councils of America, stated, quote, "With this prestige, the Negroes will be able to intermarry with the whites and begin a process that will deliver America to our cause," unquote. Communist theoretician Israel Cohen of London, England, stated, "Jewish teenagers shouldn't date non-Jews. Interfaith marriage is something we view with horror, almost with apostasy." You see, it's okay for the Anglo-Saxons to mate with anything, but they say they shouldn't. And England's chief rabbi, Emanuel Jacobitz, states, need we say more? We must intermarry the people with the blacks as much as possible, whenever as possible. The deceit of the Jews is unparalleled, the communist Jews. They are masters of cheating and deception. Their fraudulent practices worsen seriously the economy of every country in which they enjoyed equal rights. And I believe what we should do at this time, ladies and gentlemen, I believe we should make a move to get these cards put out and to get them in every hand that we can get them in. And we should ask the question, has anyone ever told you what the 10 planks of the Communist Manifesto are? And are you obeying just one of them? Because if you are, you support and adhere to being a communist, totally controlled by the Jews. And one of the key agencies in America is the Anti-Defamation League of B'nai B'rith, which was exposed in 1947 by Major Robert H. Williams before the Un-American Activities Committee in Washington, D.C., and its use in a world communist offensive. I would like to state that Major Williams was no longer connected with the military service as of 1950. He was honorably discharged on December 21, 1950, on the day Anna Rosenberg, a communist Jew, was confirmed as Assistant Secretary of Defense in charge of military personnel after Major Williams had exposed the communist aiding record of Mrs. Rosenberg. So you've had treason in your land for a long time, but after tonight, you have a full understanding and you realize what the 10 planks of the Communist Manifesto really are. And before we leave, I will state this to you, that there is an alternative. There is an alternative, and that is we must return back to the laws of Yahweh God. We must return back to the original laws that our forefathers fought, bled, and died for, called the Constitution, the Articles, the Bill of Rights, the books of Leviticus and Deuteronomy, and all the laws that Yahweh God gave to his people. The true Israelites, who are the lost sheep of the house of Israel, the Anglo-Saxon Caucasians. And if you read just the 10 Bill of Rights, freedom of speech, press, and assembly, freedom to keep and bear arms, no forced quartering of troops, no unreasonable search and seizure, freedom not to be a witness against yourself, guarantee of due processes. That's judges obeying the law, you know. Just compensation for the taking of private property, a speedy and public trial, trial by jury, freedom from excessive bail, no denial of any rights not otherwise mentioned, and all powers not mentioned in the Bill of Rights and the Constitution are reserved for the states or the people who reside in those states, the white Christian Anglo-Saxon Americans. I believe it's time we put them all on the line and we start doing our job and we start informing people and exposing these corrupt politicians and we start doing our work of informing our people. What do you think about that? Turn with me to the book of Hebrews. Say to yourself, wow, we finally got to the Bible. The book of Hebrews, chapter 13. Hebrews 13. Paragraphs 8 and 9. Hebrews 13, 8 and 9. And in Hebrews 13, 8, it said Jesus Christ, this is Yahshua, the same yesterday and today and forever. He changes not, and we are not to change. Neither were the documents that our ancestors brought forth with this republic to change, but they certainly have. Be not carried about with diverse and strange doctrines, the 10 planks of the Jewish Communist Manifesto, ladies and gentlemen. For it is a good thing that the heart be established with grace, not with foods which have not profited them that have been occupied therein. Turn with me to the book of James, chapter 1. James 1, paragraphs 22 to 27. But be ye doers of the word, and not hearers only, deceiving your own selves. For if any be a hearer of the word and not a doer, he is like unto a man beholding his natural face in the glass. He's an impostor. For he beholds himself and goes his way, and straightway forgetteth what manner of man he was. But whosoever looketh into the perfect law of liberty, and continues therein, he being not a forgetful hearer, but a doer of the work, this man shall be blessed in his deeds. If any man among you seem to be religious, and brideth not his tongue, but deceives his own heart, this man's religion is in vain. Pure religion, this is race, understanding of Anglo-Saxon history, and undefiled before God and the Father is this, to visit the fatherless and the widows in their affliction, and to keep himself unspotted from the world, or the world system, or the Jewish Communist Manifesto. Paragraphs 1 to 16. And after these things Yahshua appointed another 70 disciples, also and sent them 2 by 2 before his face into every city and place where he himself would come. Therefore said he unto them, the harvest truly is great, but the laborers are few. Pray you therefore that Yahweh of the harvest, that he would send forth laborers into his harvest. Go your ways, and behold, I send you forth as lambs among the wolves. The Fabian socialists, the Jew communists of England who came to America, and their symbol was what? A wolf dressed in a lamb's clothing. Carry neither your purse nor your scrip nor your shoes, and salute no man by the way. And into whatsoever house you enter, first say, Peace be to this house. And if the seed of peace be there, your peace shall rest upon it, and if not, it shall turn to you again. And in the same house remain, eating and drinking such things as they give. For the laborer is worthy of his hire. Go not from house to house. Well, there goes the Jehovah Witnesses. Paragraph 8. And into whatsoever city you enter, and they receive you, eat such things as are set before you. Good food. And heal the sick that are therein, and say unto them, the kingdom of Yahweh is come nigh unto you. But into whatsoever city you enter, and they receive you not, go your ways out into the street of the same, and say unto those in the city, even the very dust of your city which cleaveth unto us, we do wipe off against you. Notwithstanding, be you sure of this, that the kingdom of Yahweh is come nigh unto you. But I say unto you, Jew communists and you proselytes, that it shall be more tolerable in that day for Sodom than for that city. Woe unto thee, Chorazin, and woe unto thee, Bethsaida! For if the mighty works had been done in Tyre and Sidon, which have been done in you, they had a great while ago repented, sitting in sackcloth and ashes. But it shall be more tolerable for Tyre and Sidon at judgment than for you. And you, Capernaum, which art exalted to heaven, you shall be thrust down into hell, the cities. He that heareth you heareth me, saith Yahweh, and heareth the true right-wing Christian men of this land and women crying out in defiance. And he that despises you, Jesus said, despises me. And he that despises me despises him that sent me. So your neighbors who want to live in communism are in for a big shock, because they shall bear their own fruits, for they have cast their own die in the presence of Jesus Christ. Shall we stand? Yahweh, we thank you for this gathering. We thank you for the multitude. We thank you for your presence. And we ask that you allow ears to hear and eyes to see, and that this shall go forth in these latter days. Be with us and guide us, and bless all those who are teaching this truth across America, and bless all those who have assembled here tonight. Bless them tenfold, and may their endeavors be blessed unto their own families tenfold. And may they go forth with tongues of fire to enlighten all their ancestors and the Anglo-Saxons that they are the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And this great battle is here in America, which shall be fought very soon. Yahweh, we need thy strength, for you are our rock and our pillar. Hear our cries and our prayers up to you. And as we depart, we shall pray the prayer you taught us to pray. When you came out of the heavens as our spiritual Father Yahweh, and took on a flesh body as our kinsman Redeemer Yahshua, you said, pray thusly, Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thine will be done, in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debt, as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever and ever.